welcome back to Agenda. I'm Lingao sitting in for Cito Beltran. We do apologize for the technical difficulties. This is one of the problems associated with doing things online. However, we are back on the air, and let's bring back our first guest, Dr. Alethea de Guzman of the Health Department's Epidemiology Department. Doc, thank you for joining us, and thank you for staying on.
Yeah, sure po.
Doc, let me ask you about vaccines naman. I do realize that numbers of those vaccinated have been going up, but at the same time, mukhang may problema dun sa getting those who got their first dose to come back for their second. Parang ang reklamo ng ilang LGUs, maraming hindi nag-appear for their second shot. Baka naging kampante sila with the first.
Tulad po nung nasabi natin, no, talagang pinapaigting natin yung panawagan natin sa ating mga kababayan na nabakunahan na get your second dose po, no. It's very important that will render the full protection po ng bakunang yun. Wag po kayo mag-alala. Madalas po kasi itanong sa amin is, paano po kung nakaligtaan ko na, kung lumagpas na ako ng isang linggo, no? Actually, di naman po tayo magbaback to zero. Kailangan lamang pong ibigay nga yung second dose na yon para kung yung mga antibodies na na-form sa atin medyo natulog ng kaunti dahil nakalagpas tayo dun sa schedule, magigising naman po yan ulit, no, when you get that second dose actually. So, and that will give you that full protection.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, at least in previous studies, some of the vaccines mas tumataas ang efficacy with a bigger delay in getting the second dose. But that's assuming that you get a second dose.
Yes po. In some vaccines, like for AstraZeneca, no, that's why nagde-delay po tayo ng at the least 4 weeks to minsan up to 12 weeks pa nga po, no, sa ibang bansa yung kanilang interval between the first and the second dose.
What's the best way, do you think, to get people to go out and register and get vaccinated? Kasi, I mean, for example, Manila has been having a problem getting those who have appointments, those who are supposed to appear for that particular day to go and appear. I remember it was the other day, reklamo ni Mayor Isko, nung pinigil nila yung walk-in, walang dumating.
Parang walang tao po, no?
Pinayagan yung walk-in, dagsaan yung mga tao, parang yung mga nagrehistro parang hindi ganatong magpapahuna, pero yung mga hindi makapagrehistro, pipila.
Yeah. So tingin ko po isang bagay, no, when we have more people getting themselves vaccinated and they have this good experience talaga sa bakuna, I think ang Pilipino naniniwala kasi sa testimonials, no. Una, gusto nilang masigurado na safe ang bakuna. Kaya po nagtatanong sila, anong side effect mo? Kamusta ka pagkatapos ng bakuna? At gusto kong i-assure po yung public na meron po tayong tuloy-tuloy na pagmamonitor sa mga nabakunahan. At kung meron nga po tayong mga nade-detect na adverse event following immunization, yun po ay tinututukan natin, iniimbestigahan natin para masigurado, no, na hindi po talaga dahil sa bakuna kaya po tayo nagkaroon ng mga AFI. Ikalawang, binabantayan po ng tao at gusto niyang makuhang information na epektibo po ba talaga yung bakuna. At nabanggit nga po natin, while there's a range of efficacy among vaccines, it is still protective and it is even more protective if you get that second dose. And I think the third po talaga is how efficient yung sistema po ng pagpapabakuna. Nakakarinig po tayo ng mga report na ang haba po ng pila, wala po kasing queue, no? So ito po yung pinaayos at pinaiiting natin ng mga vaccination site ng ating LGU para nga naman, no, you spend as little time as possible when you go there, no? At sigurado ka pag ikaw yung sinabi sa iyo schedule mo, hindi buong araw, no? Iilang minuto or oras lamang ay matatapos na po talaga tayo, no, sa pagpapabakuna po natin.
Yan. Tsaka yung tinuturukan, no? When I got my vaccine, hindi ko naramdaman eh.
Yes. Yung pain po ba?
Oo, kasi yung iba natatakot yung iba eh.
Natatakot po, no? I think that's weird about this, no? The DOH or tayo po ay used to vaccinating children talaga, no? And this is the first time that we have this parang wide-scale campaign for adult vaccination. And yun po yung kinakailangan ng mga pagbabago sa proseso. Siyempre, as an adult, mas conscious ka sa pain, no? Alam mo at pwede kang magreklamo. versus kung bata, wala po talaga. And of course, we're all working population and we need to make the vaccine deployment more efficient po talaga, especially sa mga nagtatrabaho.
When you think about it, nung unang panahon, yung mga bata, walang reklamo, walang keme-keme sa
Wala pong
pagbabakuna.
magagawa.
Ngayon yung mga matatanda, puro reklamo.
Pero syempre po, that's what we want to address and that's why we get feedback on gaano ba ka okay yung proseso po sa vaccine site, kung meron tayong dapat na mga i-institute na measures para less yung time, mas comfortable po ang ating mga vaccination sites as well as safe ang mga vaccination sites po natin.
Okay, Doc, we're almost out of time. Before we shift to our next guest, I'll give you a minute or so to say what you want to the people watching, especially when it comes to vaccines and the variants. What message would you want to leave the public?
Okay. Siguro, una gusto nating i-assure ang ating publiko na ang departamento ay tuloy-tuloy no, yung pagmo-monitor ng mga mutations, mga variants na to, at kung ano yung potential na effect po niya no, sa ating komunidad. Pero ikalawa, nakikita na natin at alam natin kung paano natin mape-prevent at makokontrol ang mga variants at variants of concern na to. Una po talaga is a very strong border control. That's why we have the facility quarantine for the incoming travelers. But siguro yung tatlong mahalaking bagay na tayo no, gusto natin na ma-implement well because these are effective against these variants of concern is una yung LGU, no? Very strong implementation, effective implementation of our PDIT or strategy na mahanap agad ang kaso at close contact at sila po ay ma-quarantine at ma-isolate agad. Ikalawa is the workplace or establishment na accountability where we want safety protocols in place of our restaurants, of our workplaces, our offices. Pero I think the third is tayo po, no? Yung ambag natin individually, no? Alam ko po, isang taon na, malaking sakripisyo pa rin talaga yung pagmamask, pag-face shield, kahit po nabakunahan na tayo ng 2 beses. Pero ito po yung pwede nating tuloy-tuloy na iambag, no? Contribution po talaga natin in our fight against COVID. No? With this LGU, workplace, individual accountability, we have proven that we can really push our case numbers down. So yun lamang po at ingat po sa lahat at magandang umaga po.
Okay, maraming salamat, Dr. Alethea de Guzman ng DOH Epidemiology Department. Doc, maraming salamat for joining us and good morning to you.
Thank you very much. Ingat po sa lahat.
Thank you, Doc. Okay, let's bring in our second guest, Interior Assistant Secretary Odilon Pasaraba. Asec, Odilon, thank you for joining us at sorry po for the delay.
Yeah, good morning. Maraming salamat sa imbitasyon na ito.
Good morning, sir. I hope you're having a
Yes.
good Wednesday morning. Sir, let's start off with this. What's the final rule on the face shields? Of course, we do know that Malacanang said na required na ulit yung face shields indoors and outdoors. Pero paghihimay lang po kasi does this mean that we go back to yung original or yung older joint circular ng IATF setting the guidelines for wearing face shields outdoors? Or talagang completely kailangan mo ng face shields outdoors?
Yes, walang nabago sa IATF resolution. Mandatory pa rin ang face shield both indoor at saka outdoor.
I'm referring, sir, to Joint Memorandum Circular 2021-0001, yung clarificatory guidelines on mandatory use of face shields. So ito na po yung mag-a-apply. Ito
Yes.
yung dating patakaran, binabalik lamang.
Yes po.
Walang mas mahigpit na patakaran na pinataw.
Maliwanag po yun.
Talaga. Okay. Just for the benefit of the public, sir, no? Yung listahan ng mga places kung saan kailangan ang face shield, ito ay base dun sa joint circular na yon. Enclosed public spaces, schools, well, sabagay, wala namang school ngayon na face-to-face.
Yes.
Workplaces, commercial establishments such as but not limited to food establishments, malls, public markets, public transport, very important, and terminals kasi nagsisiksikan sila ngayon, places of worship, other public places where 1 meter physical distancing is not possible and there is gathering of more than 10 people at the same time. Kinaklaro ka lang, Asec, para we're all on the same page at malinaw sa mga tao. So, yun po ngayon ang patakaran, balik dun dati.
Yes, still valid and binding po yung provision na yon.
Okay. At least that much is clear. Asek, let me shift naman to something, well, quite controversial, especially this week. Yung vaccine rollouts, especially sa Manila, among other places. We've heard time and again in the last few weeks, nagpapaalala parati ang IATF at ang DOH, especially sa Manila, na wag na mag-walk-in at kailangan ng scheduled, may master list, kumbaga. Sinubukan naman ni Mayor Isko nung Monday, Monday. Sinubukan ni Mayor Isko nung Monday hanggang alas 4 ng hapon, tapos after 4 o'clock, binago niya ulit. Sabi niya kasi walang dumarating, nasasayang lang yung bakuna, nasasayang ang oras. Binalik niya yung face shields. So since Monday afternoon hanggang ngayon, and apparently until the foreseeable future, pinapayagan po ulit ang walk-in sa Maynila. What is the policy there po? Where does the DILG stand on this?
Yeah, generally, no, we appreciate yung mga LGUs sa kanilang mga systems and protocols, particularly the registration. Siyempre, may mga instances wherein itong online registration makes really, hindi siya naging practical sa mga ibang tao, especially dun sa mga internet connectivity and the like. No? DILG always respects the discretion ng ating mga lokal na pamahalaan, lalo na the demand and supply ng ating vaccination or vaccine is kailangang balansehin, no? And it is in this respect na kung ano ang pamamaraan ng ating mga lokal na pamahalaan for as long as ma-achieve yung goal ng vaccination, that is to facilitate and to ramp vaccination rate, then the DILG respects and recognizes and even appreciates those
okay. So
kind of discretions.
Yes, sir. Asek, let me just make sure that I'm getting this right. So okay lang po sa DILG. There is no sanction forthcoming with regard to Mayor Isko Moreno.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I should say, for as long as walang mga violations on the minimum health standards and walang wastage doon sa mga vaccines and na-achieve naman yung mga listahan for particularly doon sa mga priorities, then whatever system effective sa lokal na pamahalaan, the DILG respects that. Yeah.
Okay, that's clear. I also bring that up kasi nagpaparamdam na rin si Mayor Toby Chanco ng nabotas na papayagan na yung walk-in sa nabotas So long as the health protocols are not violated, ibig sabihin may distancing at ano pa ba iba?
The priority list.
Yes. And the priority list. A1 to A4 yes. Or if at all A5.
Yes.
Other than that, walang problema. Sorry, Asek. So other than that, wala pong problema.
Yes po.
Okay. So at least that's clear. Kasi nagpaparamdam rin po kasi earlier nagpaparamdam yung DOH na dapat nasusunod yung patakan sa no walk-ins sige. So there's nothing for coming there. Sir, let me go back to I forgot to ask you about one more thing. Dun sa face shields po, of course we were clear already on the face shields matter. Babalik tayo sa Joint Circular 2021-0001. But same time, I understand that some LGUs do not have any rule or ordinances enforcing the face shield policy. For example, I'll give you an example. Si Mayor Joy Belmonte acknowledges na wala silang ordinansa to enforce the face shields. At sabi nga niya, it's also physically impossible for the DLGU to enforce that rule. So that I suppose that leaves us in a quandary. How do we enforce it, if at all, if we are to enforce it? Yung pagsusot ng face shield. Especially outdoors. Kasi indoors, wala kang magagawa indoors dahil establishments na yan Pero especially outdoors, what's the policy here? Where do we go?
Yes, in-encourage natin ang lokal na pamahalaan to enact, mga basic rules governing the establishment and at the same time enforcement ng ating health minimum standard protocols. Okay. Granting that face shield ay wala sa kanilang ordinansa, as the case may be, then the IATF resolution or our national policy remains to be valid. And that demands enforcement and at the same time, adherence ng ating mga kababayan at the local level. In short, therefore, the PNP, in coordination with our local government units, must work in the enforcement of the face shield implementation.
Mhm. Mm. Is there any policy decision from on the part of the DILG in case na hindi po masunod yung rule na yun?
Of course, the issue there is implementation. No, the IATF, the scope of the IATF resolution is national. So our local government units must observe national policies. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And in the IATF resolution, maliwanag naman po, together with our DILG issuances, na kailangan implement ito sa ating mga lokal na pamahalaan. Henceforth, in the absence of any ordinance, I think that the IATF resolution remains to be implemented and to be valid sa ating mga lokal na pamahalaan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We understand that, and of course, we do acknowledge that that this is an IATF policy and IATF resolution.
Yes.
But sir, in the end, the IATF policies and resolutions are enforced through local ordinances, eh. Di ba? Kasi in the end, the resolutions of the IATF, they don't really have any sanctions. They don't really have any, well, they don't have any backing of law. These are executive actions, eh. So in the end, for example, face masks. In the end, and curfews, it relies on ordinances to be passed by the LGUs. In which case, Quezon City, yun nga po, we go back to that, wala silang ordinance along those lines. Which brings us back to that question. How will you enforce that now?
Yes. Of course, kailangan natin ng suporta ng lokal na pamahalaan if necessary and really essential. Kailangan nila ng mga pagsasabatas ng mga national na polisiya para mas ma-strengthen ang ating enforcement and implementation, and at the same time, the realization of pag-prevent nga ng ating COVID virus. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Asec, let me shift gears naman. 3 more barangay captains are under fire over what appears to be super spreader events sa kanilang mga jurisdictions. I know these are details, but you might want to look at these. Si Reneo Cabahog ng Matabukay sa Liat, Batangas, Bobby Daquiag, San Mariano, San Marcela, Apayao, Franklin Ong, kakalayo ito mga to ng Kasambangan, Cebu City, Batangas, Apayao, at Cebu City. What's next for airing officials who until now are getting linked to super spreader events? Di ba? After a year of pandemic, you'd think na local officials would be the first to be worried about super spreader events kasi mga tao nila to.
Yes, our president, together with the DILG Secretary Ed Año, have been very strong and very consistent sa kanilang mga actions, and at the same time sa kanilang mga directives that our municipal mayors shall ensure that our punong barangays and local officials at the barangay level, and so with our local functionaries, must abide, and at the same time they should i-prevent yung mga super spreader activities. At sa DILG, inisa-isa na namin to para sa ganun mas lalong maunawaan at ma-implement ito. At sa katunayan, the DILG, particularly our barangay operations, have initiated and instituted actions relative to mga erring barangay officials na hindi ma-prevent itong or pinayagan, walang ginawa itong mga super spreader activities.
Asec, what's siyempre medyo madugo usually yung pagsasampa ng kaso especially if it's a criminal case that takes forever normally ang quick I suppose ang quick solution ng executive is administrative, di ba?
Yes.
Yun kasi pwedeng kaagad hindi ka kailangan maghintay ng gumulong yung gulong ng hustisya. If you had the message to local officials about the sanctions that they could possibly face for these super spreader events, what would it be? What would you like to tell them?
Yes, please be a leader of example. Kung hindi mo ginawa yan, kung hindi mo inimplement yan, mananagot ka. At ang pananagutan na yan ay because you failed to exercise your leadership. Okay? And simple lang naman, ang leadership is to follow rules and basic na kailangang i-prevent ang dapat i-prevent lalo na nasa national health emergency pa tayo. Ayun.
Let me segue na rin to ano.
And,
Let me go back. Yes, sir. Sige, sir. Go ahead.
And of course, to our municipal mayors na nag-exercise ng supervision sa ating mga punong barangays and ating mga barangay officials, kailangan nating basagin no yung comfort zone, okay, na dapat ipairal yung tamang direktiba at mga panuntunan, lalong-lalo na sa pag-prevent ng this is really a health issue, and I think we really need to be more serious about this.
Well, actually, Asec, I think we all agree it is a national health issue. I think we all agree on the need to stay with the protocols. Pero I think at the same time din na yun napansin natin in the last few weeks minsan may kiskisan in the I suppose in the enforcement of protocols and policies pagdating dun sa yung gaano ba kalaki ang kapangyarihan ng LGUs at kanilang sa kanilang pag-exercise ng kanilang devolved powers. I mean, we've seen that in Cebu. You do remember how Governor Garcia resisted for a while, for several weeks, maybe even a month, resisted yung policy ng Iatf on arriving quarantine of arriving workers. Although she gave in, ito lang a few days ago, nag-soften na si Governor Garcia. Pero paminsan-minsan talaga nagkakaroon ng kiskisan yung kapangyarihan ng LGU vis-a-vis yung polisiya ng IATF at ng national government. How do you see this being resolved? What should be the framework or the attitude of LGU officials when it comes to this?
Well, the DILG and of course national government agencies recognize local government units as partners, development partners and enablers. So there must be a good building of partnership and strengthening relationship between the national government agencies as a source of national policy and at the same time local government units as expected to be enablers and implementers ng mga national policies. Actions at the local level must be consistent with the national. Para sa ganoon, may synchronization and at the same time may concerted effort. Para sa ganoon, we have to maximize or optimize the achievement of our goals, particularly this pandemic.
Okay. Asec, before I let you go po, one last question for you. If you have any message for those who are in charge of the vaccination centers. I asked that kasi nga it's been controversial this past week, especially in Manila and possibly in Navotas. What message would the DILG want to give to local officials in charge of the vaccination centers as far as their protocols are concerned, as far as their systems are concerned?
Yeah, to increase trust and confidence, lalo na, and at the same time to remove din itong mga anxiety ng mga kababayan natin na more than a year na so about the pandemic, no? To our local officials, sobrang mataas ang expectation ng ating mga kababayan that the vaccination is the real game changer. And salamat sa inyong efforts, inyong commitment and dedikasyon to our health personnel, our local officials, barangay officials in general, sa kanilang mga suporta in terms of the registration, in terms of even no sa ating mga constituents na kailangang magpa-vaccine. Alam ko malaking obligasyon to, responsibilidad, but I think this is the right way to go because vaccination is the key for the safety of everyone. And sana to our community residents as well, please cooperate with our barangay and local officials.
Okay, maraming salamat, Interior Assistant Secretary Odilon Pasaraba. Sir, thank you for joining us and we hope you have a good week ahead. Okay, and that's today's agenda. Keep it here on Cignal TV channels 8 and 250 for all the latest news. Sitting in for Rosita Beltran, I'm Lingao. We are One News.